Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. It is Jeremy Werner, Joey Wagner with you today, and we're going to focus on Illinois football in the middle of March Madness. There's a lot going on with Illinois football. The Pro Day is on Thursday. We've caught up with a lot of the new staffers, a lot of the new transfers, and you got the NFL draft coming up, and spring ball starts on March 23rd. And Joey, we got to catch up with Illinois coach Bret Bielema about all of it. We usually get him on the pod about once a year. And this was a fun one, man, to catch up with him after a busy offseason for Bret Bielema.
Yeah, it was fun to just kind of digest a little bit of all of the changes. And that's been kind of the theme. Bret's put it out there, the offseason of change or transition, however you want to put it. And it's been the story of the offseason, mostly on the defensive side of the ball. So it was good to just have a little bit more of a casual conversation, not in that – sounds so stupid from the outside, but not even in that, like, podium – seated, everyone's got our phones because that's what we do now. Just to have a more of a relaxed conversation about it really was good.
Yeah, so we caught up with Bret Bielema. We talked about the staff changes, Bobby Hauck, being able to retain Barry Lunney Jr., some of the guys that we don't talk a lot about. They're kind of behind the scenes a little bit, but also talking about a lot of new players and who fans should be looking out for to take up a step up into bigger roles going into the season. So let's hear from Bret Bielema, Illinois head coach, coming up next on the Illini Inquirer Podcast. This episode of the Illini Inquirer Podcast is brought to you by Columbia Street Roastery. Go visit our friends at Columbia Street Roastery if you live in town in Champaign-Urbana, or if you don't, visit them at csrcoffee.com. I've told you guys one of my favorite things about covering Illinois football games in the fall at Memorial Stadium is they have Columbia Street Roastery cold brew and nitro brew on tap up there. Well, you don't have to cover Illini football to get access to their cold brew because they sell them in cans at csrcoffee.com. It's a smooth cold brew, easy to drink, and great for on the go. If you like iced tea as well, Columbia Street Roastery has great iced tea packs to make freshly brewed iced tea at home. You can try all their different flavors, including Fiesta Mexicana, a sangria-like flavor with fruits of mango, lime, strawberry, orange, and peach, or just go with their traditional. It's a good, smooth, traditional black iced tea. Go to csrcoffee.com now and get 10% off your first order with code Illini All the Way. That's code Illini All the Way to get 10% off your first order with code Illini All the Way at csrcoffee.com. You also get free shipping on orders of over $45. So go visit our friends at Columbia Street Roastery at csrcoffee.com. All right, it's March Madness. Busy time for basketball, but pretty busy time for football as well. And if we're going to talk some Illini football, why not just bring in the main guy, Illinois head coach Bret Bielema, joining us now. Bret, thanks for joining us. We always appreciate the time. How you been, man?
I've been good. Been busy. Super excited. You know, we're really just wrapping up 8 weeks of what I call summer one. So I've always kind of gone back to in my life, right? Like in early phases of my career, you used to have a huge emphasis on the summer, and that was an 8-week window when guys would have a lot of body mass, strength gain, weight gain. So when I took over as a head coach in 2006, one of my first decisions was, well, why have just one summer, have two? So we've always done 2 summer sessions, 8 weeks in January, February, March, and then 8 weeks in June and July. So this is kind of summer one wrapping up. We'll go on spring break next week, and then we'll hit the ground running after that.
Well, I can't wait to talk to you a little bit about spring ball, a little bit about your roster and new staff. But I just kind of want to start big picture here. It's amazing. You're 5 years into this, Bret. We're going into year 6 here in Champaign. And kudos to you. You have raised the bar of expectation of winning here at Champaign. But what's the next step? Like, what's the next step and what's the plan to get there for you?
You know, I appreciate the question. You guys have aged very, very well. You guys look like the spring chickens I met 6 years ago. So through what's crazy now is, right, we're doing all this on Zoom, which we actually learned, you know, through that COVID time, right, which I think is absolutely awesome. We do Zooms now in recruiting that were really kind of discovered during that window. So it's kind of awesome to know that time really taught us things that we learn now, right? And I'll go back to 6 years ago. I go to my first phone call with Josh, and one of the things that he kept saying was sustainable success, right? Like the whole goal and mission was to build something that was sustainable over the course of time. He talked about my time when I was in Iowa that tied to Hayden Fry, my time when I was at Kansas State that tied to Bill Snyder, my time at Wisconsin that tied to Barry Alvarez, and all those places that built sustainable success through coaching transition. And you know, we're sitting here 5 years into it, going into our 6th year, 2 back-to-back years, the most winning in Illinois history. And the goal in year 3 or the next year 6, is to have sustainable success. And I think a byproduct of that will be hopefully a bowl game. A byproduct of that will hopefully be, bigger aspirations for our fan base, continued success in Geese Memorial Stadium, to have a 12-2 record over the last 2 years at home. Like, we build to that. Like, there's now a feeling every time we go to our home games that there's a home field advantage that I don't think I've ever felt probably until the last year and a half in our program here. So that's really exciting.
You knew this was going to be a big year transition. You've talked about that, Bret, because he had his great senior class. They're out the door now. That can be scary, but it's also kind of an opportunity, right? So as you kind of started this off season of, change, of all this transition, what was your kind of idea? What did you want to do with both your roster and your staff?
Yeah, Jeremy, great question. Again, I had known going back to last January that this was going to be a transitional year. We had so many veteran players, guys that had come back and invested in us. So I kind of called it a year and change to all my, recruiting personnel staff, like Pat Embleton. He'll verify, going back to last year in February, March, we talked about, hey, it was going to be a big transition year after our last bowl game. And talking with Josh Whitman, our AD, I just had a feeling, you'd gone 3 straight years without transition in any of the coordinator positions, offense, defense, and special teams. I just knew that there was going to be something that would happen. And I just knew, through being 16 years, going into my 17th year last year, now going to year 18, you can feel these things coming. And I think we were prepared for it. Obviously, the proof will be in the pudding in the fall, but super excited about not just the transition of our roster, not just the transition of our coaching staff, but also for our fan base. It just kind of rejuvenates a little bit of them to kind of see something new and allow them to wrap their mind around it.
Right, you look around college football, around the Big Ten, with what you and Indiana have done, and programs that hadn't won in the way that you guys are winning now. What is the key in the transfer portal era to turning a program, and how much of that is turning perception of a program from the outside?
I think you got to know you, Joey. To be honest, like, you guys know this. You go all around, right, and see other places, other buildings, other rosters, other coaching staffs, and I think the familiarity with Illinois, for me as a head coach, like, what does this building allow us to do? What is the resources we have here in Illinois allow us to build, right? I think because of the transfer portal, because of NIL, because of revenue share, the ability to change your roster in a short amount of time has significantly changed, not only during transition of when I became the head coach here, but also now just year to year, right? I knew I was going to need a huge influx of offensive line talent. We were losing a lot of really good players. So I go back to, setting up a policy before the year even started that we were going to watch O-line top prospects of portals and JUCOs and potential portals going back to week 1 of fall season. We were watching JUCO, we were watching high school, we were watching potential portal. I remember laying my eyes on Christian Martin as soon as Colorado State fired Jay Norvell. Like, I knew that Christian Martin existed probably 2 weeks after that, right? And even though we couldn't get in there and talk to him, we knew that he was going to be available when that portal world opened up, and to be just a little bit more advanced. Micah was a player that we identified right away out of Mount Sac, that as soon as I saw his film, I literally said, move him from there to there, put him on the top of our board, right? Just because I thought he was probably our best interior offensive line candidate, even though he was playing tackle. I think he was a guy that we identified early on that this might be a starter for us potentially out of the JUCO world, much so we did with Isaiah Adams a couple years before that. So I think knowing Illinois as Illinois has helped that process more than anything. And then you also got to know, there's so many things that I've learned during my 5 years of being here, how to get to where we need to be before it really comes up. That's probably a big part of our success as well.
Zoom in on the offensive line real quick. Obviously, there was a lot of new faces there. What do you feel like you guys accomplished, and what were you looking to accomplish from a play type, a body type, or all of those things when you kind of rebuilt this?
I think first and foremost, I think the value of playing college football, no matter where it's been, is extremely beneficial, right? Like, the biggest fear you always have with an incoming freshman. Listen, we recruited a couple offensive linemen and a couple skill players on both sides of the ball that are very talented coming out of high school, but they haven't done it at the college level yet. So I think anybody that has played some valuable reps, whether it be FCS, whether it be a group of 4 or a group of 5, whether it be JUCO, I think the value of playing against higher level competition is extremely high. So that's why we went that direction. And then more than importantly, like I give a lot of credit to Josh Whitman and then Roger Denny, who unfortunately has obviously got a great opportunity now. We really navigated some things within the university that used to be huge hiccups. The athletic department went to work with administration on campus and got some ability to move guys in quickly in the transfer portal academically, which I'm going to tell you, when we got Art Sikowski here back 5 years ago, it took like an act of Congress to get him in to school. And he was a really good student, but Illinois had these standards and these things that had been set. And so I'm new coach coming in and I'm saying, hey, I'm going to uphold those standards, I promise. Right. But they didn't believe it. Right. And now we've had 6 straight semesters over 3.0 GPA. Now they know that we're actually backing up what we said we were going to back up. So they've given us some ability to do things we've never done before, which has been a game changer for us in recruiting.
Bret, how did you, is that just your personality that you're going to push the program to do something different? Because before it might've just been like, all right, that's the way things are. We're handcuffed. Like, how do you go about that?
Well, if you ask people that work for me in this building, one of my most common elements is I don't take no for an answer. I just really believe, a relentless approach to making someone think unlike they've thought in the past as long as it makes sense, right? I'm not going to make us do something we don't want to do, right? Like, but I do think that sometimes people just say no because it's easy, right? Rather than, okay, hey, this is where we're trying to get to. If you help us do this, it can make this happen faster, right? And the whole key is communication. A lot of times people say no because they don't know what they're saying no to. And if they say yes because they've been presented a different way to think about it, it can help so many people. And in reality, a lot of times it makes their jobs easier, right? Like, why do it this way when there's an easier way to do it? That's probably been the biggest theme for us. And Pat Embleton would tell you, Pat's been here, 14 years now, right? And through a lot of different coaches. One of the first times I had a meeting with him postseason, it was either in year 1 or 2. He's like, Coach, one of the best things I've learned from you is to never take no for an answer. Now, I'm sure Josh Whitman would tell you at times he probably doesn't like that approach, but I think it's also having realistic expectations. I'm not going to ask us to do something that can be detrimental to us, detrimental to the program. I wouldn't ask us to sacrifice. One of the reasons we can recruit academically the way we can here at Illinois is because of our integrity and because of that degree. And that helps us out in the long run, big ways.
You mentioned all the transition you're having, but Barry Lunney Jr. is still here going into a 5th year after having so much success here. Were you surprised that you were able to hold on to Barry through his success? And what does it mean to have him as you go through this transition and given the success you guys have had together?
I distinctly remember a year ago having a meeting with Coach Lunney and with Aaron and just saying, hey, if we have the year I think we can capably have, like, you may have these options, you may have these opportunities. Just know, come to me, right? Because I think there is a point now with the way we can pay guys and the repercussions that happen from maybe a group of 5 job or something that's used to be viewed, hey, let's go get. I know my first head coaching interview was at Ball State, and I wanted that thing as bad as anybody in the country, right? I'm so glad I didn't get that, right? Because I finished number 2. They gave it to Brady Hauck. He did pretty good with it, right? But then 3 years later, I got the head job at Wisconsin. I don't think that ever would have happened if I'd taken that Ball State head job. So I just said, hey, man, like, when these moments come, let's talk about them, right? Because right now, the way that we're moving and the way that we're building and the way that Josh has afforded us to pay our coaches, you can hang on and try to get that P4 job, right? You can wait and get that Big Ten, that SEC, that Big 12, that ACC job, and it's just a little bit easier path to success.
How have you cultivated that trust and comfort with these guys? I feel like that's what guys want to do. They want to be head coaches. That's why you get into this. So how have you built that where they're comfortable coming to you and maybe hearing like, hey, this isn't the best, maybe just hold on a second?
Joey, to be honest, one of our big catchphrases in our building is don't be afraid to get uncomfortable, right? And I say that all the time to my coaches. Like Barry Lunney, he made a comment to me literally less than 2 hours ago about one of the things he's doing offensively is to make sure the language and the verbiage of what we're saying makes sense, right? So that it makes sense to not only what we're trying to get done, but so it makes sense to our players, right? And I coach our coaches all the time. Contrary to popular belief, I don't sit in there and make offensive calls or defensive calls or special teams calls. I hire coordinators to do that, but I will challenge my coaches on how to game plan or how to approach a game plan, how to put an idea in someone's mind that makes it manifest into a game day reality, right? So I enjoy coaching my coaches. I was very, beneficial to the fact that, my first head coaches I worked for, Hayden Fry, Hall of Fame, Kirk Ferentz, Hall of Fame, Bill Snyder, Hall of Fame, Barry Alvarez, Hall of Fame, Bill Belichick, Hall of Fame, right? The 5 guys that I kind of cut my teeth with are all Hall of Fame coaches, and they coach me every day. And the rewards of that is what I'm giving my staff now.
Listen, you're about a month into the Bobby Hauck era at Illinois. What have you learned about Bobby just being around him every day in the facility?
Steady. Joey, I can't stress enough, to sit in the seat he sat in. I think he's had 16 postseason bowl or postseason playoff opportunities that he's coached in as a head coach, right? Like when you've seen it, been there, done it, and all the things that he's had to deal with as a head coach, there's not a lot that's going to make you, deviate from what you've been. To bring in with a building, 2 coordinators that have been his last 5 years of play callers are in the building with him. Like the value of that is worth its weight in gold. So, and then I think he's just so comfortable, to have a couple guys up front, to have JT and Mike Linehan. Even though he hadn't been around Jordan, he knew who he was, been around in that system. Mike Linehan was his D-line coach at obviously Montana. To have Ronnie and Coop, both guys that have been his coordinators in the staff room with him. And then to add the guys that we had, Corey Parker has been absolutely awesome in the back end. And then to have Archie in the linebacker room who was able to relate to that. And then to have Alex Panos up front with those guys, guys that have been with us for a while now and knows our current roster. That's been what's made this transition really smooth.
When you have a guy who has sat in the seat for as long as Bobby did, how did you get comfortable knowing that it would all work well? Because that is a big career change for him, and you clearly had to trust him that it would go smoothly.
Yeah, I think you really got to know the person. I've known Bobby for a long time, man. We've his wife will tell the story. The first time she was ever around us, she's like, these two, and she just rolls her eyes, right? Because she knows we kind of immediately had a connection. We served on a couple committees together, and there was that immediate kind of same mind, same thoughts, like mind, like thoughts. But I've really went overall, if you guys really, and I know you have, right? So my first hire, Jared Elliott, right? Head coach, coordinator, been in positions of influence several times in his career. You look at Tyrone Wheatley, right? Wheat's been a head coach at 2 different places. Now, he'll be the first to tell you they weren't overly successful, but to sit in that seat, that value is huge. Mike New, I promoted to passing game coordinator, head coach for a number of years, right? So on offense, I got 3 active head coaches that are actively involved in game plan. On defense, we have Myers Henderson, who's a head coach at Western Illinois. Now we have Bobby Hauck. We also have Corey Parker. Even though it was a height, I'm telling you, I don't care what the level, anytime you're a head coach, that value, that experience, that vision is unique to you. And Corey Parker was an extremely successful head high school coach, right? And to bring that into the room is absolutely awesome. And then the experiences, so, Coop, bounced around 4 or 5 different NFL teams, actually was out of coaching to get back into it. He'll tell you the story. His wife actually set up his first interview. She came in the door and said, hey, you got an interview in a half hour, right? And he's boom. All of a sudden he's a linebacker coach there in his town that he was working in, right? So all these guys kind of have unique journeys and past. I'm telling you, Ronnie Bradford, when you get around him, his value and his experience, when you get done playing in the NFL and they hire you immediately as a coach into the coach, from the player locker room to the coach's locker room, that usually means something, right? And I think those guys bring a lot of valuable experiences.
Bret, you've brought us some fun quarterbacks to cover. I mean, Tommy DeVito is Tommy DeVito, right? Just that personality, bringing him in the building. And then Luke, I just, the last 3 years of being able to cover his journey and how he's grown as a person, as a player, has been so much fun. Now you bring in Caton Hauser. We were able to talk with him the other day. Really impressive, driven young man. What made him the guy for you
Yeah.
to go after, and what kind of impact do you think he can make on your program in a year?
Well, first of all, I don't care what position we're dealing with. Like, the first thing you got to do is you got to like the film, right? And, I got a list one day. We had 14 quarterbacks who were either in the portal. We thought were going to be in the portal. And I don't want to know what Barry thinks. I don't know what Art wanted to think. I don't care what Mike New thinks. I want to know what I think, right? So I let them grade and evaluate on their own, and then we collectively kind of come together. And all of us had Caton as either 1 or 2 on our list of all of the quarterbacks in the portal. I loved his release. I loved his journey. He started as a true freshman at Michigan State in front of a guy that got a lot of attention this last cycle. So I knew early on he had success. Those coaches didn't do that by chance, right? But because of the struggles he had there, I love the story and the journey of ECU, and then to get around the kid. And it's kind of funny, like, as there's only going to be one Tommy DeVito. There's only going to be one Luke Altmaier too, right? Like, here's a kid coming from Mississippi who now has more Illinois DNA than you could probably ever imagine, right? But he's literally kind of a combo platter of guys I've been around. He kind of has a little bit to me, a little bit of a guy I had way back in my career, Scott Tolzien, who's just a very process-driven, came from a military background. And then I had Russell Wilson. Russell was unflappable. He was very calm, cool, collected, but was one of my first transfers. Then I get Brandon Allen, who, in my opinion, is a very, very similar to Luke, but Brandon came up in the coaching profession with his dad. And then we get to Tommy and, of course, Luke here. But, one of the cool things that you're going to love, Caton, right? A very unique name, right? So I always love names. So I'm on a Zoom with Dad and Caton, and I'm like, where's the name Caton come from, right? And it's actually the surf shop that his dad went to as a young person. And it was Caton, whatever, surf shop, right? And that was the derivative of where he got his name. And the cool part was my wife and I met in the Wynn Casino in Las Vegas. Yeah. Not letting too much cat out of the bag, but his mom and dad also met at the Hard Rock Cafe in Vegas, right? And I'll let that story read itself. But there's just a bunch of these little stories around his story that made it really cool. We got down to the end there, against us and a couple other schools, and I think he actually told us he was going somewhere else, and I kind of got on there and went at him full throttle. And actually his dad called me later that night. And he said, hey, man, I appreciate you coming at him that way, because that's kind of what made him flip, right? Like, I just said, what are we doing here? Like let's not go to a 7th grade science project. Let's go to something that's been proven and where we can go. And you can be a Tommy DeVito. You can be a Luke Altmaier. And I think that's probably what got him here in the end, and what we're really excited about.
Obviously, you need the offensive line around him, the wide receivers around him to succeed. But you seem like you've built up a pretty good quarterback incubator with Barry Lunney Jr., Art Sikowski, and Mike New, who we got to chat to today. And former head coaches you talked about. What do Mike and Art add to what you have on offense, especially in that quarterback room?
Well, as you guys know, Art's special. His detail, his intelligence, his ability to relate to people. I knew it as soon as I was around him. Even in the recruiting process or going through those first couple of years as a player, he's just got a very unique gift. He's very relatable, very, very coachable. He listens all the time, but he also has some really good independent thoughts. And so to have him build up under Barry, and then to add I kind of hit lotto 2 years in a row, unfortunately Dana 2 years ago, but the effect Dana Dimmel had on our program was monumental. And so, when Dana passed and I was filled with that next window to try and bring someone like him, I came across Mike's name and just really impressed with who he was. We knew some people commonly. We didn't know each other. As you guys probably witnessed, his demeanor is very calming. But I tell you what, like, he helped. I would bet you if you asked Luke, what Mike New did for him, he would go on for quite a few comments in a row. Mike is very one of the few guys I've ever been around. There's no ego involved. Everything is about how do we make this player better at what he does well, which resonates really good with me. And the continuity that him and Barry Lunney was like instantly. It was very, very cool to witness last year. And then Mike just kept adding to that room. And so that's when this summer or this offseason came. I said, hey, can we make this a little more permanent? And I was very nervous about losing him, but At least we got it back for another year. And those three guys, that triple-headed monster is pretty cool. I'm going to tell you the other thing, Joey and Jeremy, and you guys know this. I probably, in my coaching career, have never had as much arm talent and ability to have a QB room the way that we got it right now. I'm telling you, Carson Boyd threw the ball as good as anybody I've ever seen or that I've seen him throw here in the last couple of weeks. And then add Michael Clayton, who it sounds crazy, but as an incoming freshman, he has every throw. Like the ability to throw the ball isn't going to be anything that limits him. I think we have a guy recruited and committed to us that I think throws the ball extremely well. So I couldn't be happier about that room and the way we have it set up right now. And Shawnee Newton just is a great competitor that continues to get better every day as well.
The first time we talked to Art, I think he came in after Brandon got hurt in maybe the opener of your first season. And he didn't really want to talk about Art. Well, you started talking about the team, and Art's like clapping outside in that media area. I'm like, man, this guy's got some jazz to him. Like, what is it like being around him every day?
Well, first off, it's infectious. I mean, you've been around some of those people that have that demeanor, and people are like, whoa, right? Like, well, Art just brings it to you, right? Like, I'm going to tell you. So we have these little block eyes, right? Like little block eyes that are magnets. And when I always tell coaches, like, when you go out on the road, differentiate yourself from the others, right? You're competing with every school in the country. What's going to make you unique and different? Anywhere that I go with Art, he's handing out those things like their Halloween stuff or Christmas stuffing stockers in their stockings. Like the receptionist at the front door, right? The AD secretary, the head coach's administrative assistant, and everybody just is, oh, I know this guy, right? Like he just makes an impression, but also to see him work with our guys. The detail of the game that he has, the ability to make big picture items small and to make the smallest little item appear very, very big in the bigger picture. That's a very unique gift, and he's got it every day.
I do want to ask you just one more about the defense. That's such a big story for what you guys have done this offseason. I know you had kicked around this idea in your brain for a while, this new scheme, but at what point did you realize, like, you know what, we really have to go forward with this new scheme and this new idea? And how did you get there?
It wasn't just one defining moment. It was kind of more of a cumulative understanding. Like I really think for me as a head coach, like we started this whole conversation about, I knew it was going to be a year of transition with our roster, but also then with our coaches. I just had a feeling that when the moment came and the opportunity presented itself from a defensive game point, like it really got down to this. When we came into this league and when Ryan and I got together and we kind of built this Illinois defense, it was a little Mizzou, it was a little Patriot. It was a little bit of commonalities that we had with some other people and built the Illinois system. It was very unique. There wasn't a lot of people doing it. And now within the framework of our 18 teams, there's probably 12 teams that at some point run a version of what we were doing. And the newness and the ability to prepare for us uniquely had kind of evaporated. So I was really looking at something that presented that, but also brought, as crazy as it sounds, this is a very unique defense, the 3-3-5, but our leading structure last year defensively was 3-3-5. It's just now they're kind of doing different things and people are in different places. The players are excited, like to see our players react the way they have, to have defensive linemen and DBs and corners and safeties talk about the excitement of this defense is really fun. And I think the part that I really enjoyed, Coach Hauck in one of his opening pressers talked about, hey, our offensive guys are going to love to watch our defense play, right? And I think that's kind of a unique way to look at it, but it's so true.
Brett, last one I got for you. Guys that you obviously need guys to take a leap this year, right? Who are some guys that we're going to learn about, that fans are going to learn about in the next year?
I think a defense and an offense is always built from inside out, right? So the easy one on offense is obviously whoever's going to be under center, which, obviously we brought Caton in for a reason, but I think you're going to like what Carson Boyd brings, and I think Michael Clayton is a really exciting player. I tell you, Jake Renfro, even though he's been limited in what he's doing, he's been a very impressive person in the workouts, weight room, his demeanor. He's been a lot of experience at a lot of different places. I told him, we're just going to get you healthy. Like, I know if you're healthy, you can play good football for us. And then some of those core linemen, I think Micah's the guy, Christian Martin. I think the growth of a couple of our guys that began to do things that Nathan Kanopi gets out a really, really good fall or a really good winter. So I'm excited about that. I would tell you Colin Dixon and Hudson Clement, but the two receivers that we brought in from FAU and FIU, Jay Sean and AP, really impressive. I think you're going to like what Tyrone Wheatley brings to the running back room. I think he's got a little edge to him and what that can bring into Aiden Lawfrey, Khalil Valentine, Jordan Anderson, and a couple of these freshmen. Defensive side of the ball for sure. We built it obviously to retain Xavier and Matt were big pieces of the puzzle. So we want them to grow in this system, come forward. But I just heard our defensive coaches say not only is Juice Clark obviously a really good player, he's also a really good teacher. He has taken his leadership role and brought along some of these young corners. Really impressive to watch. James Kreutz is a little bit limited, but I know they're really excited about what he brings. Up front, there's a kid by the name of DP, Daryl Prater, who gets vertical in a very short amount of time. Joe Barn is limited, but I think some of these guys that are going to be in new positions and allowing them to do what they physically do a little bit better, I think it should be a really fun thing to watch.
Bret Bielema, I know you're busy. Got to go recruit. So we appreciate your time as always, Bret.
Appreciate it, gentlemen. Have a great one, ILL.
All right, Joey, what stood out to you catching up with Bret Bielema? A lot of good stuff there. Just some good stories about the players, good stuff about the staff, but a lot of change for his program, and he's putting a lot into Bobby Hauck. Obviously, that is the biggest story of the offseason so far, is a new defense, a new defensive scheme, and his change there.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of what Bret says you have to tie into stuff that we've learned over the last week or so, talking to assistants. Roger Cooper, linebackers coach, was honestly one of the better spokespeople of the 3-3-5. Like, he talked about what it takes to be all in on that. Jordan Thomas, today defensive line coach, to just hear more about it. But you got to be all in on this defense. And Bret Bielema is all in on Bobby Hauck and giving him that runway to do what he needs to do as a defensive coordinator to make this go and to be different. Like, that's the thing I think is probably where I land, right? Like, obviously it needs to be a more successful defense. Like, the numbers back that up. Bret touched on that about a week ago when he met with us. But you also have to be different. And I think this 3-3-5 is their avenue to be different. I don't know that this is going to catch on like that first Illinois wave of defense caught on around the league, which is what really Bret says prompted this shift. But that's kind of the circling point I have, is they want to be a different defense, one that when you have 7 days to prepare for, that's a long 7 days, right? And I think that's kind of the big thing. You got to have success with it, but I think they want to make those 7 days not particularly fun for opposing teams.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely wants to be different. The other thing that I think is clear is he wanted to have a guy he trusts to just run it, right? Like, to just, you are a former head coach, you know how to run a program, now come run my defense. I think he's got a lot of faith in that. And we're going to talk about some of the things we learned. And I want to hit on some of the assistant coaches you were talking about there. But I think one of the most underrated storylines of this offseason, Joey, is that Barry Lunney Jr. is back. Like, we didn't know if he would be back. But one of the things
a year ago, we were packing his bags at this time, right? Like, that's how we talked about Barry. Yeah.
Just doing the Michael Scott.
To be clear, the parade, the whole deal. And not because Barry was bad at his job, because he was good at his job, and we thought that would sooner than later lead him to a head coach. I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's a very different 12-month window in which we're talking about Barry Lunney in terms of keeping him, when I thought for sure, like, this makes so much sense for him to take that head job. And it was good to talk to Bret about that.
And can you imagine if it was a complete reset of basically the entire staff? Because if Lunney's gone, you're like, well, what happens with Justin Stepp and all of that? So the fact that you have, some stability on that offensive side of the ball with a lot of that stuff, you've changed tight ends coach and running backs coach, but a lot of that other staff is staying there, including Mike New and Art Sikowski, who Bret talked about. So to have that through all the change of the offensive line and quarterback, I think is massive. And I think it makes sense for Barry Lunney. And it really speaks to the power of Power 4 programs right now, that you can pay them, coordinators, more than head coaches at Group of 5 programs, right? At American Athletic Conference programs. Look what Ohio State just gave Matt Patricia. He's getting paid more than NFL defensive coordinators, most of them. So that's huge, that you can be patient. And we've seen that with guys who, Kirby Smart stayed with Nick Saban for that long. Like, some of those Brent Venables stayed at Clemson for that long. There's worse jobs than being a Power 4 Big Ten offensive coordinator under Bret Bielema, especially when Bielema obviously completely trusts Barry Lunney to run that operation. So I just think it's massive and we shouldn't overlook it.
No, I'm 100% with you. And I think Barry trusts Bret. And like you heard Bret talk about, hey, just talk to me. We'll see what's out there. And when he says that, and I think this is something we should clarify, that's not Bret saying, I don't want to lose my OC, so I'm going to throw this job under the bus, because that it's, hey, there's a big picture to this. And one, Illinois can compensate Barry very, very well. And two, you can wait it out for a good opportunity, but Barry has to trust Bret in that too, right? And I think that's a good partnership those two have in that trust to know, you don't have to take the first head coaching job that comes your way. And you and I are of the belief pretty comfortably that he's interviewed for some jobs. So like, it's not like this is just something we're talking about in hypotheticals. I do think that partnership between those two is significant.
Yeah, you don't want to leap at just the first job because that could derail your career. And Barry, he's not old, but he's 51, 52, right? So like, how many opportunities are you going to have at that? Mike Loxley left for New Mexico, right? Like, and that's not a terrible job, but it did not work out for him, and it derailed his career for about a half a decade. And it took him a while to get back to Maryland, took him the Nick Saban, right? Experience. So it can really derail you if you pick the wrong job to go off of. Personnel wise, what stood out to you? I thought the fact that he mentioned Micah Madalau a couple times stood out to me, because we know how high he is on Christian Martin, Nathan Knapp get those tackle spots, but that guard competition with Brandon Hansen involved there, TJ Taylor, but him mentioning Micah Madalau a couple times kind of really stood out to me.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think, we're so used to covering high school recruiting. When I heard Micah, my first brain's like, they really think Micah Smith, just to be clear, moving forward, they're going to refer to Micah Smith as Champ. That is like the Juice nickname. Like, I would imagine if it's not changed on his profile, it will be before long. It might already be. But yeah, I thought the two mentions of him. So now he says that, and you and I are sitting here like, okay, now we have some offensive line shake. Jake Renfro is the center. I think we're of the belief Christian Martin is the left tackle. I think we're of the belief that Nathan Knapp is the right tackle. Brandon Henderson returns at right guard. So all of a sudden now this whole offensive line reset, and I don't, obviously you never write those in ink on March 11th, right? But now you can start saying, oh, maybe there's a really big left guard battle that's happening right now. And Micah Madalau was mentioned, Taylor was mentioned, I think Brandon Hansen is a name that's still in that conversation too. So yeah, I don't know if that was him tipping his cards or if he was just talking about the guys he had, but the two mentions was you kind of pay attention to that.
I turned on the film and I saw Isaiah Adams. That's what I saw. I'm not saying he's going to be there, but just when I saw Isaiah Adams' JUCO film and I saw Micah Madalau, I thought they were kind of similar style of players. So I could see why they really like him. But Joey, we've caught up. If you want to talk about anything else with Bielema, what he had to say, but we've had so much media availability the last couple of weeks, catching up with the coaches, the transfers, in the middle of March, right as the season's going on. So we've been very busy with all of this, but I talked a little bit last week when you were going back and forth, covering a lot of things. Like, what has stood out to you about getting to know some of these coaches or getting to talk with them and some of the transfers? So I give the floor to you for the first one.
Yeah, let's start with the transfers, because I think we need to talk about Katin Houser, because we finally got a chance to talk with him. And even on the pod, Bret was like, however that shakes out at the quarterback position, but we brought in Katin Houser for a reason. Yeah. I mean, obviously, yeah. He cared. Like, the whole story with Luke Altmaier early in his tenure was, he's obviously got arm talent, maybe not the most experienced in college football at this point. It's a little quiet. You want to hear him, you go from Tommy DeVito, who, is Tommy DeVito. Then you go to Luke, and then you go to Luke. And then, that was such a story. That's not it with Katin Houser. Like, the way he spoke in that was kind of Art Sikowski-like. Like, he can really command a room. He speaks loudly, and not in a way that he's screaming at you, but I think Bret said it a number of times. Like, you can tell he's confident in who he is, and maybe that's his path to get back to the Big Ten, whatever that case is. But I just got a lot of Art vibes from the way that he spoke. Obviously, he's a different quarterback than Art Sikowski, but Art was valued so tremendously, and he still is, for his leadership, for his ability to communicate. And I got a lot of that from Katin Houser. So that was really one of the big things. We have to start with the quarterback, and that was probably my biggest takeaway. It kind of mirrored how I felt that second spring that we talked to Luke Altmaier, and it's like, whoa, he is way different than he was a year ago. You talk to Hauser, it's like, whoa, he's very comfortable in who he is and expressing kind of his thoughts and his beliefs as a quarterback.
Yeah, I caught up with Alex Perry, and he said his leadership, Caton's leadership stands out. He said he's not the loudest guy, but he said you can tell he's got that fire inside and that he's a dog. He said he doesn't want to run the ball, but he looks like one of those people that'll take a hit for his team and everything. And so I asked him, I go, what's his leadership look like? And Alex said he's not a huge vocal guy, but once the bullets start flying and he's going, then he turns it up a little bit. He has a quiet confidence about him that I really feed off of. So just interesting stuff. And obviously Alex Perry's only known Caton for a month or two, but those two are going to play an important role in this offense. So good early indications from him. I could tell you, Joey, there are only a couple guys that Illinois was going to go after to replace Ethan Hampton on this roster, and he was one of them. They thought that Ethan Hampton could help them win games. Now, could he be the reason they won games? I don't know. But they also really like Carson Boyd, and Bret said that again here today. But this gives him a year to kind of develop, to get a little bit better. But I can tell you, if Caton can't go for a game, like they are very high on Carson and his talent. I've always been high on Carson. Thought he was a 4-star prospect, except for the height. He's about 5'11". If he were taller than that, he would be 6'3" and would have had everybody. So the talent in that room is great. And if you can hold on to Camden Lapati, that the talent in the room is going to be really good for a long time.
Yeah, and I'm glad Bret mentioned that, because it's what we've been talking about. Not only do you have this three-headed monster as they've been kind of pairing themselves. I don't think coaches need NIL deals, but that's an idea of Mike New, Art Sikowski, Barry Lunney. But it's a very talented quarterback room. It's reflected in what we've seen of the tape when they recruited these guys. It's what we've heard about Carson Boyd. He's the longest tenured quarterback in that room right now. Him and Jershawn Newton. But yeah, it's a very, very talented room. Can I give another takeaway from the week?
Yeah, go for it.
I was really impressed with Roger Cooper and Jordan Thomas, and not because
the top one I had, Joey, was Katin Houser has the it factor. I just think he's got an it factor. Yep. And the film's good. 2, Roger Cooper and Jordan Thomas are great spokesmen for the 3-3-5 defense.
Yes. And here's the thing: like when we think about this, and I thought Roger Cooper, I would encourage people to go back and read your story from last week with him, just because for this defense to be successful, like you have got to be, hey, we are all the way here on this. And he said that, right? And it was an adjustment for him. He wasn't a 3-3-5 guy by trade. He found his way to that. And if you put everything you have into it, there's really a lot of 3-3-5 converts, right? People who are like, I don't know. And then you're in on it. And I thought hearing it from him, hearing it from Jordan Thomas, and the way that it's just like a football lifestyle, right, with some versatility and all of those things. And I think you and I both still have very reasonable questions about how successful this can be. But those two I thought were awesome voices for what this is and why people should be minimally at least eager to see what the output of this defense is and what this defense can be.
Yeah, and Jordan Thomas, talking with him today, apologies, just didn't have time right now to cut up some of the audio like I did last week, but we were talking to him about like what makes defensive linemen good in this, and he said speed, get off the ball. That's the most important thing, because this defense, what they want to do is just disrupt the backfield. It's single gap, get upfield, and he said it's a lot of fun to play in when you're a defensive lineman. And he played in it under Rocky Long at San Diego State. He coached in it at San Diego State, so I'm excited about that. The 3-3-5 scheme, like I don't think it's some junk defense, right? What I don't know about, Joey, is the talent, right? At defensive line and at linebacker. Do you have the dudes you need to be successful in this defense at the Big Ten level? So I think with years, they'll get better. They will add more and more talent. I love what they have in the secondary. I'm intrigued by some of the talent in the front, but it's just you lost a lot of guys who are really important to your defense. Gabe Backus being part of that, James Thompson Jr. being a part of that, but Tommy Wadurajai, like there's just some guys with NFL traits that you have lost. And now you're relying on a lot of guys who played at a lower level, and Carter Janke and Daryl Prater, as Bret Bielema mentioned him, that was interesting. Isaiah Thomason, Connor Sullivan, like you're just adding a lot of guys that were under the radar guys that you're counting on for huge roles in the Big Ten, which at least the Big Ten is becoming a passing conference, but you still got to be able to stop the run. And that's what I'm interested to see. And that's Bobby Hauck's job, is to make sure that with the talent they have, they're still able to be very competitive up front in the Big Ten.
Yeah. Then what do you get from your returners, right? You return Pat Farrell, you return Joe Barna, who's now a defensive lineman in this scheme. What do you get from those two in particular? Do you have a Demetrius John, a Cam Brooks, an Isaiah White, or do one of or two of those guys, do they step up into a bigger role? We're not going to know that until like September 1st.
Yeah, Grant
But I
Beard,
just think,
right? Like I love the idea of it, but we got to see it now.
yeah, so I think there's still a lot of reasonable questions, but those two I thought did the best job of really saying, hey, this can be something really, really fun. And Jordan Thomas did some real name dropping of guys that he had coached, and it's what you got to do, right? And you got to sell it as places where people have been successful and have fun doing it. So I thought those two were good. The other thing I thought, and we've talked about this a lot, I'm sure this is also your number 3 thing, there is a Barry Lunney succession plan developing, it has been developed, right? Like we talked about our relative surprise or just the fact that Barry is still the offensive coordinator and hasn't made the head coach jump to this point. But it seems like when and if Barry makes that jump, Mike New is a guy ready to go, waiting. Art Sikowski has been empowered in ways that you've seen this longer than I have. To see a 25-year-old empowered by a Power 4 program in the way that they are, that we've been singing about Art for 2 years. That tells me something, but there's also pretty clearly a plan in place for what's next if shakeup happens because Barry graduates up into a head coaching job.
And I think it's always important to know, Bret has said this before, I think even on this podcast last year, like he usually has a succession plan. He usually, he will go outside when he feels like he needs to go outside. Tony Peterson, he replaces with Barry Lunney. Bobby Hauck replaces Aaron Henry. But Aaron Henry was an internal promotion. I think Kevin Kane was kind of thought of as a guy who could take over as DC once Ryan Walters left, but he went with Aaron Henry. Dave Doran was an internal promotion. Chris Ash was an internal promotion. Like he's done this a lot, and I think he'd prefer to do that. So when he hired Mike New, a former, head coach at the FBS level, I was kind of like, oh, that guy could make sense. He's called plays. He's been in the NFL coaching Drew Brees for a year or two at the New Orleans Saints. He's working hand in hand with Barry Lunney Jr. right now. And while we are high on the Art Sikowski will be a Power 4 offensive coordinator before most people are offensive coordinators at the Power 4 level, potentially before age 30, he's still not there yet, right? Like I don't think you hand that to him yet. So Mike New would certainly make a lot of sense. Him getting the pass game coordinator title and Bret Bielema rolling him out there to us to talk with us. And he is really impressive. He's a really impressive dude. I enjoyed really talking to him. I texted Joey right when we learned we were going to be able to talk to Mike New. Joey knows how excited I was because he makes the most sense. As if Barry gets a head coaching job next year, Mike New would make the most sense. But if Barry stays around, which would be a great problem for Illinois, I think Mike New is going to be going to have some opportunities to be a play caller somewhere.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And you're right. All the kind of the pieces in place. I also get the sense from you that Mike New is your coach sign guy at this point. Yeah. He is very much that. So yeah, we've been talking about Mike a little bit, getting to talk to him today. I hope you'll watch the video on the Illini Inquirer's YouTube page. But I think he was really, really impressive. And it just furthers, hey, they really believe in this guy. And he seems to be next up here with Art very closely in tandem, right? Art is no longer he's 25. He's the full quarterbacks coach. There's no co in that title. That means something, right? I would imagine, it almost feels like, okay, if Barry were to leave, Mike New becomes the offensive coordinator. Art is quarterbacks coach / passing game coordinator, right? Whatever that looks like, that clearly is where, it seems to me that Illinois is going on the offensive side of the ball.
And it may not work out that way, right? But it just feels like that would be a natural progression for all of that. One thing I learned, just standing next to Alex Perry and Christian Martin, they look the part, Joey. I haven't seen them play football outside of what's on film, and you could see on film. Alex Perry is a phenomenal basketball player, Division I offers, and it translates to the football field. He's a go up and get it guy. Good speed, replaces a lot of what Justin Bullock did, but have more production at the FBS level. So I'm excited about what he's going to add in that X receiver spot where they lost basically everybody who played that position last year. I guess, Hudson and Collin did, but to have a true guy that you feel can be your starter at the X, and he's different than Pat Bryant, but just be that guy. I'm interested to see how that develops. But Christian Martin, man, you turn on the film, all the athleticism, length is there. I think the key for him is strength and improving his anchor, but he looks the part, and he was really impressive. You got to talk with him, Joey, just a really impressive young man. So I think those were two of the biggest transfer additions they made, along with Caton Hauser, and they're going to be really important parts of the offense.
Yeah, I'd put Carter Janke in that physically impressive category as well. When we say this, these are guys who look like they've been in college football for a little bit, right? Who obviously are physically gifted to begin with, and they look like guys who have been in a weight room for a long time. So I co-sign on all that. I talked to Will Holmes today. Fascinating story. I thought it was really good to hear someone be as transparent as he was about he was a professional baseball player. He was drafted in the 5th round by the Angels, retired in 2023 after a 4 or 5 year career.
Throw some heat.
To hear him say, yeah, it was like topping out at like 98 miles an hour on his fastball, and he could hit the ball too. Like, he was kind of that two-way guy. We're not trying to paint Shohei Ohtani here, but he was he had that two-way ability. If you go back and read some of his scouting reports, that's how they talked about him. And then to just hear there's a mental block, and to be transparent and honest about that, I thought that was really good. I also think there is an adjustment for some of the defensive transfers who committed to a different coaching staff and learning a new scheme, a new staff, new people who were not here when you committed, who did not recruit you out of the transfer portal. And that's not to say they're we don't know anything more about them, but it's clear, you lose Terrence Jamison, Aaron Henry, Trent Harris in the case of Will Holmes, okay, that's different than what it was a month ago when you signed up for this, or 6 weeks ago. And I think we have to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I mean, Bret Bielema had a different staff then. They were selling those people. They were selling a different defense. Like, Will Holmes was probably imagining the Gabe Backus role, right? Levon Williams, Aaron Henry was the reason he committed here. Deuce Fillmore, I think Aaron Henry was in on, right? So how do those guys fit in the new scheme is going to be really interesting, because they didn't commit to that scheme. And, some of those guys, Will Holmes got a couple years of eligibility, but Levon and Deuce is their last year of eligibility, and there's no spring transfer portal. So they got to make the most of that. And through the change, I'm sure it's been a little jarring for them to kind of adjust to, but we'll see where they go from here. Jake Renfro, love his story. Love his ability if he's able to get here. But in-state kid that the previous staff, and you could read the story at IlliniInquirer.com, caught up with his dad, that the previous staff invited him on a visit, and no one talked to him from Lovie Smith's staff. Like, Luke Buckus was recruiting him. Some people on that staff really liked Jake, but some didn't. And ultimately, Illinois didn't really offer him. Becomes a freshman starter at Cincinnati, becomes All-American or All-American Conference center at Cincinnati, and plays on the college football playoff team. Then injuries have derailed his career, did transfer to Wisconsin, followed Luke Fickell there, and started 17 games, which has just continued to have injuries. If he's healthy, boy, that's a nice replacement for Josh Kreutz, and a bigger player. Like, he is bigger than Josh standing next to him. So you wonder if he could really help in the run game. But the key is getting healthy. You got TJ McMillan behind him, who at least has some experience in the system. I still wonder if Brandon Henderson would play some center if Jake Renfro wouldn't be able to go. But Jake's going to miss spring ball. But talk about leadership, experience, 7th-year Tommy Boy guy, Joey. But, man, you're rooting for a kid like that. In-state kid, grew up an Illini fan. Dad, Rick, went to Illinois, played at Illinois. That'd be a great story if he can end his career healthy and with the program he grew up with, rooting for.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be a huge story. I also think getting him in particular, obviously you go and get a transfer quarterback who Caton Hauser is going to be the starting quarterback. You go get him, but you go get Jake Renfro. That shows some urgency to me, right? Some urgency in pushing this forward, because I think collectively, a lot of people think TJ McMillan's a pretty good football player. I thought he held up pretty serviceably at Purdue when Josh Kreutz was out, and it would have made sense to go with him. And you go out and you get a Jake Renfro, and maybe that's like the 1 in a million type of guy where the story fits, the talent fits, the 1 year fits. Maybe that's the case. But that also shows, hey, you got to keep pushing this thing forward a little bit. And this kid, he's got the talent, he's got the leadership, he's got the experience. We like what he can bring to the table. I just think that's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, I didn't have center maybe that high on the offseason addition list, but maybe Renfro is kind of that perfect overlap in the Venn diagram. It's like, yeah, you got to do this one.
Other thing, I just think there's a lot on Carter Janke and Daryl Prater, right? To be really high impact players. And it's nice to hear Bielema say something like, hey, Daryl Prater can really get off the ball. They need a disruptor. What they're asking out of the nose is way different now, right? Like they're not asking them to be Calvin Avery or Denzel Jackson and eat up 2 blockers. They're just asking them to disrupt, get upfield, stunt, all those things. And I think he's got the skill set to do that. But Janke, a big kid, I think he'll probably play a lot of the James Thompson role. He said it'll be a 3 or a 4 technique, kind of in that similar role. And then Joe Barna, I think that's your 3 defensive linemen right there, Joey. But they're counting on those guys to be high impact players.
Yeah, there's a lot on the defensive line. Both the transfers and Pat Farrell and Joe Barna and some of those returners. Demetrius John, this feels like your time here.
Yep.
Right? Like we like the length that Demetrius John has. We like some of that. He's kind of been
and this scheme is really good for him compared to the last one.
Yeah, so there's both the transfers need to hit, or all the transfers, some of the transfers need to hit, but you need some of those returners to really step up into that role. This is a huge spring and summer fall camp for that defensive line, because there's fair questions given what they lost, given, that you're getting guys who are kind of graduating up a level in college football. It's a really, really big offseason for that defensive line, and with the new coach on top of it.
Last thing I had was Ethan Machowski's return. It's really cool. He's only the second one that's kind of transferred back, him and Casey Washington. He said, yeah, it'd be nice to be as successful as he was. But, you lose David Alano, and that's a loss. Like, he's a really, really good kicker. But Ethan Machowski, Robbie Disher told us back then, I think they both hit 82% of their field goals during the training camp of 2024. But Alano was better inside 50 yards, so he won that job. But Machowski was better outside of 50 yards, so he got that job. Only got 2 kicks out of that deal, but made a career record at Illinois with a 59-yard field goal. Just kind of cool that, Illinois understood why he left, because David Alano was still here, and that the door was still open for his return because it left well. Like, Machowski didn't burn any bridges on the way out in Illinois. Bret Bielema told him to keep the number. And if you ever needed him, to call him back, and gets back in the portal, and Alano leaves. And it's great because, you got a guy that Chris Hurd, the new special teams coordinator, knows really, really well and has seen succeed in their practices. And they obviously think he can translate that to games.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who listen, people on our message boards, people who really are all the way in on following every roster move, I think a lot of people know this. It's also a nice reminder that sometimes both sides agree, hey, there's a better opportunity for you. There's a better opportunity for us. There's nothing wrong. We spent a lot of time in your living room trying to get you to come to this school in the first place. It's not like one of those, and another thing, as they're storming out. There's a lot. Now, sometimes it's maybe not always as peachy.
That's right.
And I think we know that. But I do think a lot of times, especially with football, when you're just talking the sheer volume of movement, there's just a lot of mutual understanding here as guys start to wind their eligibility clock to the back end of what's possible. And Ethan Machowski really fits that, and he'll compete with Lars Rau. I think that's a legitimate competition. That's going to,
Lucas
Osada. I also asked Mike New about Jake Elliott today, so I'm a little bit off, even though I meant Jared Elliott, not the kicker for the Eagles.
See, you don't know heavyweights references, so anytime Lars Rau comes up, I think, do it to it, Lars. But you've never seen heavyweights, but you should.
That means literally nothing to me. I know nothing about what you just said.
Yeah, I get it.
I don't, maybe one day, maybe this will be like the summer of movies for me. Maybe I'll sit down and watch movies so I can at least understand your references.
8 hours straight of binging television, but the movie's too long for you.
Yeah, because there's natural breaks after 45 minutes, and I can breathe a little bit. It doesn't make any sense. That's what I do.
By the way, new season of Shrinking. Binging that this week. Damn good. That Bill Lawrence, what he's doing.
Exceptional. Real quick, before Jay Lehman, All-American linebacker.
Yeah.
Exceptional on the pod. All-American realtor. Working on some stuff. Shout out to Jay.
I know we got to get across the finish line, Joey, but congratulations. Soon, homeowner, if all goes well. Got a few more steps, but that's a big deal. Look at our guy.
I don't you could probably help me with whatever yard line we're at. We are somehow playing the game. I don't know what the yard line is.
You are inside the 5-yard line. You are inside the 5-yard line here, bud.
That's great. That's awesome. That's
welcome to mortgage.
And for the podcast listeners, viewers, really, I'll have a better backdrop at some point. And I thought about doing
guy who's in our
page
YouTube,
around the horn.
The one guy who was in our messages on YouTube, just forever. Just Joey needs
Wagner, your house sucks, dirtbag. Yeah, man, I'm working on it. I'm trying to get a backdrop here. Cut me some slack.
We're working on it. Congrats to you and Whitney. That's all.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Any final football thoughts before we get out of here?
No, Pro Day. Pro Day, I'm assuming this is going to post before Thursday. Can we just give the Pro Days on Thursday? I don't know how much Gabe Akis is going to. He didn't do much of the combine. That was not long ago. I would be surprised if he went through a great deal. I would assume
sounds like he's going to do his own Pro Day. Like he's going to do his own single Pro Day. It sounds like there was a hamstring issue, so maybe get healthy.
But this is a big pro. Obviously, he was a combine guy. J.C. Davis, Luke Altmaier, combine guys. But listen, man, can we give a top 3 Pro Day?
This is one of the most interesting Pro Days we have covered because a couple of years there's been a Casey Washington. It was a huge day for him and he got drafted. I think a lot based off of that. His interviews went well, but there's 5 guys who are fringe draft picks or undrafted free agents. So I think we could go 5. But
sure,
number 1 most important for tomorrow, or do you just want to say number 1 of top prospect here?
Number 1 most important. I think the top prospect, non-combine top prospects. Because I think the top prospects and most important kind of overlap. The most important day.
Gabe, JC, and Luke don't need to do much. Luke's going to throw, so that'll be interesting. And Colin Dixon and Hudson Clement are going to be part of that. So kind of like Isaiah Williams was the year before he went to the NFL. It's good experience for those guys. It's Gesky and James Thompson are the top guys, right? And for them, they were probably close to getting to the combine. Tanner Arkin's kind of in there too.
Yeah, I think there's maybe tiers. I think Gesky,
Elvin
and James
Priest.
Thompson. Yeah, those two kind of feel like they're their own kind of space. Then you have Melvin Priestley, Tanner Arkin, Hank Beatty in that next wave. I think all those guys end up in a training camp. It's just how do you get to training camp? Are you in a UDFA? Are you a late round guy? We'll see. But I think it's a big day for them. And I know, are you going to say I think Miles Scott is fascinating.
I was going to say Miles Scott's probably in there. Him and Hank Beatty, the 40 times going to be important for those two, yes. Right? Is he Isaiah Williams or it's a 4.61? And it's worked out pretty well for Isaiah. He's been running away from people as a punt returner. But if he's in the 4.5s, it'd feel pretty good about him. And if he's under that, obviously it'd be huge. But Miles, can he be in the 4.5s? I think that would be really, really important for him. And a guy I don't want to overlook, Josh Kreutz is going to be in there. The size is concerned, but Dylan Rosiak too. Now, Dylan Rosiak has got, I don't think this guy's going to get drafted because of the athleticism, but Jake Hansen made it to the NFL, and he and Jake have a lot of similarities, more than just the school they went to in high school.
Yeah, I think you also have to look. Delshon Phillips just got another contract. Special teams is an avenue. It is one of those things that you probably overlook until you don't overlook at Indiana. But that is an avenue to paydays in the NFL. That's where Isaiah Williams is a guy who used special teams. Isaiah Williams did the Hank Beatty in the NFL, right? Got in special teams. Now it's kind of finding his rhythm elsewhere. So that's a huge part of this. And I don't think
how many snaps did Tanner Arkin play of special teams? Because that guy's going to potentially make a career on just being the third blocking tight end, a fullback, and a special teamer. You get 3 players in one.
Yeah, that is where if you're a fringe guy at a certain position, that's where that special teams talent can get you another paycheck in the NFL and get you close. So it's a sneaky big pro day for Illinois football and a chance to get some of these guys maybe climbing into that back half or that back end rather of the NFL draft. I'm not, we'll see how that obviously plays out. And I don't think you and I are projecting this pro day to lead to 8 more guys in the 7th round or anything, but there are some guys who have a chance to climb. And I think it's going to be very well represented by NFL teams. And that's also a big deal and tells you where Illinois football is.
Yeah. Because I think more than 3 guys will get drafted for Illinois this year. The question is it 5? Is it 6? Is it 4? You know what I mean? Like, I think a couple of these guys who did not get invited to the combine will find a way. And I think Geske with I thought he made big leaps this year. I thought he was one of Illinois' most consistent and best offensive linemen this past year. Bret Bielema helps, right? The history of Illinois there. Hank Beatty with what they've done with Isaiah Williams. I think that helps in his special teams ability. Tanner Arkin, not quite the athlete of Tip Ryman, but has some of those, qualities. And then Miles Scott's been a 3-year starter in a DBU kind of situation that I think he's got a chance to get into a camp. And listen, James Thompson looks like an NFL player, right? He's had some injury issues and he's not the most athletic guy, but if I'm a 3-4 team, he's a 3-4 defensive end. That's really intriguing. So big day for all these guys. And it's got to be nerve wracking, but it's also exciting. They're close to their dream. I think all those guys we're talking about here are going to be in NFL camps one way or the other, but getting your name called still feels pretty great.
Yeah. It sounds like James Thompson also had a nice East-West Shrine Bowl during this early part of the offseason. So he's a guy that I think is him and Geske feel like some battling it out for the 4th Illinois player drafted and do they make a fit? So yes, a huge day. We'll have it covered. Then we'll go to Chicago. There's some basketball tournament happening.
Yeah, and I just don't want to overlook Melvin Priestley, who to me looks like an NFL guard. What he did at tackle at Illinois, but he was probably the best athlete on that offensive line, and just so much nastiness in this game, man.
Some like real, like some NFL offensive line coach is going to turn on that, or some assistant, and see Melvin just what Dick Bucket say, knocking the piss out of people during the press conference. They're going to see that, like, yes, sir, I appreciate that at guard. And I think that nastiness might get him on more computer screens than you think.
Yeah. So be interesting. Just takes one team. Takes one team to draft you in the 6th or 7th round or whatever it is. So exciting day for them and just exciting for Illinois to have this many guys. I mean, there's so many years I've covered Illinois football, Joey, where they haven't had one draft pick. And now you're routinely having multiple guys outside of last year because Pat was the only one. But it's kind of become a known that you're going to have multiple guys. And next year, I think they're going to have multiple guys and potentially 3 in the secondary alone. So exciting time. The Illinois is kind of just continually churning these guys out. And it's part of why you're winning so many games.
What would your 40 time be? I'm not asking about the bench press.
I've run a 40 at the Smith Center. I've run a 40. When I was in high school, Joey, I think it was a 5.6. I think I ran a 5.6 there, laser time.
And we're thinking for sure it'd be faster than that now.
No. I got a bad wheel right now. One of the knees is barking, so I could run it, but probably pull a hammy while I'm doing it.
I feel like I'm a walk the 40 type guy.
Could you beat Rich Eisen? He's a sub-6 guy, I think. Around 6.
Is he really? There's no way. No. I would also, in fact, as soon as he really got some distance ahead of me, I'd just quit. I'm not going to do this.
By the end of it, just 40 yards. Joey would look like Andy Bernard on the fun run.
Yeah.
Just 40 yards. That bad.
When Kevin, they have to park in the different parking lot for construction. He says, God is my witness, I'll quit. That's also me. If you even try to consider asking me to run a 40.
I don't know. I had you walk like 12 miles around DC once. You held up all right.
It was hell on earth. Yeah. That was rough, man.
All right. We appreciate Bret Bielema. Appreciate Brett Moore, Illinois Athletics Department, for setting that up. We appreciate giving us some time to talk to you guys and learn some stuff from Bret Bielema. So we always appreciate them joining us. But for Joey Wagner, I'm Jeremy Warner. Everybody have a great day. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer Podcast.
Bye, everybody.